It's important. If we don't generate consensus in America, we're in trouble. Joining us now, Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. He's a member of the House Intelligence Committee. I want to start with the threats against these 13 Republican colleagues of yours. Congressman Fred Upton received a threatening voicemail that we're not going to play here for the purpose of not amplifying the threat, but it has been verified as authentic. John Katko, Republican of New York, had to defend his vote. He said this: it will help improve the atrocious state of our infrastructure, while noting his office has received, quote, a substantial amount of troubling phone calls. Ronald Reagan cut deals all the time with Democrats for the good of the country. That is what we're supposed to do. This isn't a zero-sum game. But Punchbowl News is reporting that Mark Meadows has greenlit a plan to punish these 13 Republicans, strip them of their committee assignments, and more.
Yeah, well, Nicole, it's a really sad state of affairs. I mean, you know, you don't need to be too experienced in Washington to know that just 15 years ago, nothing would have been less controversial, really, investment in infrastructure, in roads and bridges. And yeah, there's broadband in this bill. That's a new thing. And yeah, there's some investment in electrical vehicle infrastructure. That's a new thing. But this was always, you know, bipartisan. And now, not only is it not bipartisan, at least if you listen to people like Mark Meadows, it was, in fact, bipartisan. We got a lot of votes in the Senate and a whole bunch of votes in the House from Republicans. But now this is being turned into a betrayal of Donald Trump. And we know where Trump's coming from, right? Joe Biden got this done. Donald Trump couldn't. Donald Trump will never be able to live with that. There are Republicans like Mark Meadows who are being very honest that they would much rather see the American people suffer with, you know, old roads and bad bridges than actually give Joe Biden a win. But Nicole, what really scares me about this, and I'm not using that term loosely, is the language, the death threats.
Right.
You know, the Republican Party today is saying that you're destroying America, that the Republicans who voted for this are traitors, that it's communists. Remember, communists were generational enemies of the United States. Nicole, you're hearing this from somebody who lived through January 6th. It is a matter of time before a less responsible follower of Donald Trump or a less responsible Republican is going to pick up a weapon and kill someone. And I never imagined that I would be concerned about that, but here we are. I think that's a very real threat. And if the Republicans can't dial back their rhetoric, that's where this is going to end.
You sit on the Intelligence Committee. I need to ask you, let me just reread what I started this hour with. The DHS National Terrorism Advisory Bulletin was updated today. It says this: through the remainder of 2021 and into 2022, racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists and anti-government, anti-authority violent extremists will continue to pose a threat to the United States. Law enforcement officials have expressed concern that the broad sharing of false narratives and conspiracy theories that endorse the use of violence will continue to gain traction, resulting in individuals or small groups embracing violent tactics to achieve their desired objectives. So the DHS advisory bulletin reached the same conclusion, and I wonder what sorts of things specifically go into a warning like that being made public.
Well, we've just been through 4 years where the president of the United States gave license to those groups, and we run through the whole catechism that he laid on America. You know, when he was asked to repudiate the Proud Boys, he said, you know, stand back and stand by. You know, all the way back to Charlottesville when he said there were good people on both sides of protest by white supremacists. They've been given license. They've been encouraged by the establishment wing of the Republican Party. And maybe some of my Republican friends would argue with that. But again, what the president of the United States said matters. And when they tolerate language, we haven't even talked about the fact that one of my colleagues, Representative Gosar of Arizona, published this meme that showed him killing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and attacking the president. And by the way, nobody's calling for him to be sanctioned. They're calling for the folks who helped with bridges and roads to be sanctioned. I'll say it again. If this continues, somebody's going to get killed. And while my colleagues will try to wash their hands of that responsibility, make no mistake, the language that is being used, the rhetoric that is being used is going to result in people being killed or hurt.
I want to press you on Paul Gosar because Kathy Griffin, who is a comedian by trade, that is what she did, and I don't remember all the details. I don't want to get them wrong, but there was some imagery that got her in a whole lot of trouble with the United States Secret Service and with the Justice Department, law enforcement. Are you aware of any efforts to follow up with Mr. Gosar about images just as harrowing?
Well, so I thought, one thing that's really important here, Nicole, is we can't both sides this. You can't excuse Gosar's behavior because Kathy Griffin did something. What Kathy Griffin did was disgusting. It was horrible. It implied violence. Let's just be very clear. Anyone on either side of the aisle who implies that violence is a solution to our political problems needs to be condemned as explicitly as I'm condemning the imagery that comedian put forward a couple of years ago. What troubles me here, and look, at the end of the day, Gosar is going to say, oh, it was satire. I was just screwing around with cartoons and stuff. What I want to hear is I want to hear from the Republican leadership saying we will not tolerate this because somebody is going to get killed. The Republican leader, Steve Scalise, was shot on a baseball field because you had some lunatic who, in his own demented way, thought that this was okay. It is our responsibility to call that out in explicit terms, to make it clear that there is no circumstance, just because Democrats do it or Republicans do it, there is no circumstance under which violence can be anything other than aggressively condemned in our political society.
I guess my question was more about law enforcement. If they responded to an image of the ex-president that was graphic, should they not respond to an image of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Joe Biden that is equally graphic?
Well, the answer is yes and no, right? So, the Secret Service and the police have a responsibility, if there's a credible threat of violence, to investigate it. Now, I don't think that either Kathy Griffin or Representative Gosar was saying, I want people to go out there and kill the president. If that were Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, okay? And the reason that distinction is important is because we have a First Amendment in this country that sadly protects some pretty rotten speech. So, yes, law enforcement should check the box and make sure that neither of those individuals, Kathy Griffin or Representative Gosar, were, in fact, explicitly threatening violence in a credible way. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is the normalization in our political dialogue of image of violence, suggestion that that's okay, and it's not. And people need to start saying that loud and clear, starting, by the way, with Kevin McCarthy.
Have you heard anything from Kevin McCarthy?
He's not checking in with me on this issue, but no, I haven't heard it.
He said nothing to say about Mr. Gosar, nothing.
If leaders are tolerating this stuff, somebody's going to get killed.
I hate to even say this out loud, but I fear the same thing. Congressman Jim Himes, thank you for spending some time with us, for keeping it real, even if it's scary. We're grateful. President Biden has begun the selling of his huge infrastructure package, with Republicans fueling culture wars and punishing those who voted for the package. How does this